Moving south, the small shop here was well organized with all manner of containers, made mostly of glass and each containing some strange powder or liquid. An older dark elven woman stood as we entered the building, greeting our party with the same suspicion we had experienced everywhere else within Leakley. "You're those humans who arrived, aren't you?" the elderly woman asked, not all that friendly. "I have magical potions for sale, I suppose I can sell to you." Needing some healing potions from all the combat we had faced recently, the transaction commenced and the drow elf nodded, secretly wishing we would just be on our way. "And what brings you to our tiny, miserable, forgotten island in the first place?" the alchemist asked half-heartedly, perhaps a little curious. "The outside world banished us centuries ago, we virtually never see outsiders here." "That is a long story, good lady," Redfern returned with a soft smile. "Suffice to say that we likely share a common enemy now." "And who would that be?" the drow woman asked, a little more curious. Not sure that I wanted to get into it with the alchemist, I wasn't sure how best to respond. "We've angered the inner circle," I answered with a slight grin, keeping to myself just how badly our last encounter with them went. "That's an understatement," Eswin quipped, his hatred for the circle nearly as strong now as his hatred for the undead. "And they banished you here, too?" the alchemist asked, not a bad theory. "No, we somehow escaped and ended up here, it wasn't our intent," Kartha answered honestly. "That's sort of what happened to our forefathers too, 1,000 years ago," the dark elf continued. "The circle blamed the drow for everything, including the Age of Damnation itself, and banished us all over Mariga where it was too dangerous for others to live. Today, most of our kind occupy the frozen wastes to the north, tiny islands like this one or even underground tunnels alongside the dwarves. For starting the Age of Damnation and summoning the Hellions, your punishment was just," Sainairs couldn't help but condemn, "yet another opportunity to preach his Sislan gospel." "We did no such thing," the dark elf responded, angered by the statement. "Our forefathers 2 millennium ago were strong, proud, and ambitious, yes, and war with you humans was probably inevitable. But we didn't unleash the Hellions into this world, that's just one more lie of many perpetrated to keep us dark elves down. Sislan scripture is very clear regarding who started the Age of Damnation," Sainairs countered, convinced of his beliefs. "The dark elves were losing a great war and opened a portal to the realm of nightmares, flooding Mariga with infernals and nearly wiping out all of humanity." "Your scripture is wrong," the alchemist insisted, taking a stand. "The monsters from the realm attacked everyone, humans, dwarves, halflings and dark elves alike. What could our side have gained by our armies being destroyed, too? Besides, at the time, we were much more technicky-minded, we hadn't even yet learned how to control magic." "Some things we will never really learn the truth of," Kartha interjected, speaking to the alchemist but looking directly at Sainairs. "Let's not argue over what cannot be proven. There is nothing we can do about it now, looking back," I replied, hoping to end the conversation. "All we can do now is look to the future and try to do better. But I am guessing that if we truly knew what happened back then, the world would be a very different place today. All I know is that we dark elves have been persecuted and damned for over 2,000 years, the elderly woman whispered. And while there are certainly some evil drow out there, most of us are innocent, we just want what the rest of you already have. Why is that so wrong for you humans?" "It's not wrong," Ariana answered, her response heartfelt. "You're talking about justice, that all of us deserve to be happy in life, that it's long since past the time where we should all be working together. I know, as a wood elf, I see all the racism too, all the inequity, all the mistreatment. It's not fair. But just like most of the drow today are good people deep down, so are most humans," Kartha added, actually taking the alchemist's hand in her sincerity. "And there are even those of us who recognize that we can pass our human-born privilege to others. So, there is hope." At first the alchemist looked befuddled, not sure what to think. She then managed the faintest of smiles, perhaps taking the words of Ariana and Kartha to heart. Watching the tender moment, I noted that Redfern was smiling as well. Eswin seemed rather indifferent while Sainairs was just as puzzled as the dark elf. He truly had no idea what Kartha was just talking about. Still, it was an opportunity to leave someone's life just a little brighter than it was before, and I was glad to have had the conversation with the alchemist. Proceeding southwest to visit the jeweler, the shop seemed to contain just about every type of stone, crystal, and rock imaginable, so we had come to the right place. That said, The old jeweler here seemed angry with all of us as we entered his shop, his body language screaming that he didn't want us here. Bah! I heard there were humans in Leakley, but I didn't think you'd come here to pester me. Out of my shop, now. What's the problem? Ariana asked, remaining patient and understanding. What do you think is the problem? The jeweler cried, his anger bordering on hatred. You humans have no business here, I sure ain't selling to the likes of you. As I was about to respond, Ariana simply stepped forward, ensuring that the jeweler could clearly see that she was an elf. Good sir, not all of us are human, and these humans are my friends. We're here to help, if you will let us. I don't care if you're the dark hero Dooney herself. The jeweler nearly shouted, now really worked up. I hate humans and want nothing to do with them. Out of my shop, all of you. Racism works both ways, Kartha said softly. Judge us by our actions and who we are, not by what we are or what we look like. Just as we're showing you civility and respect without knowing anything about you, Ariana added, hoping to change the shopkeeper's mind. The dark elf continued to stare at us in complete anger and disgust, the next few moments awkward for everyone. Fine, whatever. The jeweler finally stated, relenting to our party's desire to do business with him. Just make it quick. It appeared Ariana and Kartha had changed the dark elf's mind. He still seemed quite angry and would likely continue to be very rude, but at least we were able to sell him a few gems and replenish our supply of gold and platinum coins we were carrying. What can you tell us about those cursed treants attacking the city? Ariana asked, expecting a rude answer but wanting to know more just the same. Cursed treants? The drow asked, not understanding at first. You mean the old gods of the forest? Ariana nodded and the jeweler considered his response, holding out his dark hand. Nothing is free, especially information. I will tell you what I know for 100 gold pieces. Agreeing to the transaction, the dark elf grabbed my money and stashed it away. He then turned to me, a very serious look on his old face. The old gods have been here forever, at least before we were banished to this wretched isle after the Age of Damnation. They're nearly all powerful, and at first we couldn't stand against them. Once we learned that they didn't like us chopping down their trees to help build our city and cook our food, however, they began to leave us alone. Treants are like that, Eswin sarcastically quipped. What cursed them? That's something new, the jeweler answered. Back in the summer, they began attacking us outright, no rhyme or reason. Worse, they seemed crazy, almost possessed, cursed as you call it. They even had a new attack, able to suck the very life out of those they captured. It's all we can do to keep them from invading the city now. I know them as the Strenigerus, Sainairs commented, sure of himself. They're nearly impossible to fully exterminate, you need to launch a full-scale holy war against them. Easy for you to say. The dark elf criticized, not appreciating the words of Sainairs. We're no match against such monstrosities. Lord de Enzith keeps telling us he has things under control, but the attacks keep coming, we're all dead if something isn't done. Having had first-hand experience with the cursed treants, I worried that the jeweler was right, something needed to be done. Question was, did our heroes have the strength to defeat these monsters and somehow save the drow here in Leakley? On that note, the conversation ended, the jeweler still unhappy with our presence but at least a little wealthier from the encounter. Lastly, we turned southwest for the local scribe, hoping to purchase some powerful scrolls to aid our party in times of combat. Reams of paper and scroll tubes lay stacked everywhere, while a dark elven cleric awaited our presence, ready to sell us whatever magical scrolls we may require. Indeed, as we entered her shop, the older drow woman encouraged us to come in, her demeanor not nearly as negative as most of the other dark elves we had encountered. Sainairs, Kartha and Redfern all purchased higher-level scrolls. The transaction commenced and the female scribe here thanked us for our patronage, one of the more pleasant dark elves we had encountered here in Leakley. I heard there were humans in Leakley, the scribe then said with a soft smile. I don't recall that ever happening before. What brings you to our tiny island nation? We're here by accident, Kartha responded honestly, still not sure why we wound up here after our battle with the inner circle. And we're sorry for all the hardships your kind seem to be facing here. It's been quite the terrible past year, the older woman replied, her initial smile gone. Between the attacks of the old gods and the aging sickness that has affected half the city, I fear we're all in deep trouble. We're here anyway and want to help, I suggested, adding to the conversation. Who, best to talk to regarding your troubles. That would be Lord D'Anzeth, who all but owns the city, the scribe responded. But beware, he hasn't been quite himself lately. In what way? Redfern asked, the mystery deepening. He seems different, the dark elf continued, concerned. He's been acting more childish lately. He does not seem all that worried about what's going on, focusing instead on more normal things like wealth and power throughout the city. He does not even look the same, appearing younger than he once did, even though many of us are feeling, well, older. Lord D'Anzeth, check. Eswin announced, recording the name in his mind. Well, go see him at once. He's in the power tower, but it won't be that simple, the scribe continued. He's obsessed with wealth and is identifying the richest elven houses in Leakley to pay him royalties, in exchange for local power throughout the city. You'll need one of his silver medallions to even see him within his tower. Where can we acquire one of those? Ariana asked, straight to the point. There might be one available at the black market, and I believe one is being offered as a prize at the arena. But either will be hard to acquire. Thank you, Kartha smiled, expressing our appreciation. Well, see what we can do. Dominating the center of the city, the wooden power tower here was over 50 feet in height and rather odd-looking yet still regal and impressive. Appearing to have been built from a single, massive tree and carved out from within, magical light illuminated the entire structure. A single large gateway marked the entrance into the towering structure. However, that gateway was guarded by at least a dozen drow warriors in ceremonial plate armor, so it appeared we couldn't just walk in. Indeed, as we approached, the dark elves watched us quite suspiciously, some even loathing our presence, so it appeared we would have a challenging time gaining entrance here. Halt! The drow guard commander ordered as we approached to within 20 feet of the tower's door. Turn around, you're not welcome here. We'd like to see Lord D'Anzeth and pay our respects, Kartha began, her request sincere. We were warned your kind may come, the rude commander returned, eyeing each of us with great disrespect. We let you into the city, but we won't let you soil our great tower with your vile human breath. What a disrespectful thing to say. I decided to follow up with something equally disrespectful. Go tell your lord that we're the only chance you miserable dark elves got to save yourselves. Lord D'Anzeth does not need any help, especially from the likes of you, humans. The drow commander returned, her racism quite apparent. He has everything under control. Monsters are at your gates, your populace is slowly dying and we're your only chance, Redfern responded, summarizing the situation well. We're willing to help, but we won't ask a second time. Planting fear and doubt in the mind of the dark elf, the guard commander considered our proposition, appearing to actually relent moments later. It does not matter, the dark elf then continued in a softer and more respectful tone. The entry hall beyond is magically protected, only those carrying one of the Lord's silver medallions can enter. Without a medallion, the magic inside will keep the doors closed and locked, you can't pass through. Peering over the shoulders of the dark elf and her guardsmen, I could see a closed door inside that did appear to require a small, circular, coin-like object to be pressed against it. Looking back toward the guard commander, she lifted her chin high into the air and folded her arms, almost daring us to defy her and try to gain entrance to the tower beyond. Without one of those silver medallions, we were simply stuck here. Unable to enter the power tower, we headed south, stepping into a small wooden building that appeared to be a ticketing office where several dark elves conversed with a dozen or so townspeople waiting in line to buy. Beyond the building were several more wooden constructions alongside a large, open field, a semicircle of stone bleachers partially surrounding the grassy field. There was a lot of activity here within this ticketing office, but naturally I would need to talk to someone first to find out what all the hubbub was about. Trying to talk to someone, at first the older dark elves ignored me, hoping we would leave. Finally, however, one of the younger drow provided a response, unhappy about it. If you really must know, this is where our esteemed gladiators fight and entertain us, the dark elf began. Small teams of gladiators spar out in the field beyond, the winners receiving half of all the wagers. How barbaric, Kartha whispered in my ear, rolling her eyes. Don't the townsfolk here have anything better to do with their time? The games had been suspended, the drow continued, overhearing Kartha's comment and unappreciative. But today's matches are special, given the prize being offered. And what is that? Eswin asked, rather intrigued. A silver medallion. Came the enthusiastic response. A genuine silver medallion, being offered by Lord D'Anzeth himself. It's unheard of. That's the thing we need to get into the power tower. Ariana was the first to offer, recognizing the item. We need that. Everyone wants a medallion. The drow ridiculed. I will never see one, but neither will the likes of you. Why is that? Kartha asked. Only a dark elf can own a silver medallion, of course. With wealth and power comes respect, Eswin turned to me and said, expressing what I was already thinking. We should enter these games and win this silver medallion, then the drow will take us more seriously. I quickly glanced about my party members, each of them nodding in agreement. I've never heard of humans fighting in the games, the dark elf considered, surprised. But if you're serious about it, go talk to the referee outside, she will tell you if you can join or not. The drow townsperson pointed toward the large open field beyond, pointing out a female dark elf clad in plate armor and standing perhaps 50 feet away. I thanked the dark elf for his time, about to lead our party out into the arena field. As we left the ticketing office, it was obvious, the drow citizenry here were not keen of our party joining the games, and they made that perfectly clear with their sneers and chatter amongst themselves. Approaching the drow referee standing near the middle of the arena, we noticed several groups of dark elf combatants out here preparing for the gladiator games about to begin. Amongst the stone bleachers and several smaller buildings encircling the field, I also noticed what appeared to be several wooden pens, some sort of creatures locked within. And what do you want? The female dark elf asked as we approached, looking us over and likely already aware of why we were here. We want to join the games, Eswin answered matter-of-factly. And kick some dark elf ass. Ariana whispered into his ear with a grin. None of you are allowed, the woman in plate armor huffed, in no mood to even haggle. Turn around and leave at once. Are you afraid of us? Redfern asked, taunting the dark elf. Rules are rules, the drow woman finally replied. Although, large amounts of coin can sometimes bend those rules. Of course, I responded, not surprised by a suggested bribe. What can we pay you to join? I will catch a lot of grief letting you in, the dark elf responded, looking about. To make it worthwhile, let's say 500 gold pieces? That was rather steep. Agreeing to the bribe anyway, I slipped the dark elf what she requested, our party soon 500 gold pieces poorer. Entering the games, and that chance for a silver medallion, costs 1,000 gold pieces. Pay up now or forfeit your right to participate. 1,000 gold, after we just paid you 500 gold? Eswin complained, wanting at first to refuse. The 500 gold was for me bending the rules just to let you in. Everyone must pay the 1,000 gold piece fee for the right to play. Are you in or out? The woman in plate armor took the fee and stashed it away in a pouch tied to her waist, about to address us a final time. As you are the last to enter the games, you will be the first to fight. Win, and you advance to the next round. Lose, and you're out for good. Nobody fights to the death, signal your defeat at any time and your opponent will immediately retreat. Are you ready? The dark elf fighter seemed a little patronizing, as if she knew something we did not, and I warned my heroes to be extra careful. Your first opponent is another adventuring party, just like yours, the drow referee continued, about to leave. They are seasoned veterans and they'll probably make short work of you, so try not to forfeit too quickly. While several other groups of dark elves stood nearby, the drow adventuring party stepped forward, unsheathing their weapons and preparing to do battle, and they did look quite formidable. Again, don't kill anyone, either side, the woman in plate armor commanded, stepping away. But give the audience a good show, they paid a lot of gold to watch this. The drow adventuring party turned to us, wry smiles on their faces as they advanced. The party consisted of 3 dark elf assassins, 2 dark elf clerics, 3 dark elf fighters and 2 dark elf magic users. Having fought not one but 2 groups of dark elves in the past 24 hours, we basically knew how to handle this party, although we had not faced the dark elf fighters before. As the battle commenced, I planted a skeleton seed to cause an undead hero to appear and attack. We also set our blink dog and hellhound pup against the drow magic users, needing to take them out of the fight quickly. While Eswin, Ariana, and I handled the fighters and assassins, Sainairs and Kartha matched the magic being thrown at us by the 2 dark elf clerics, holding one and soon defeating the other. A well-placed web spell from Redfern then tied up most of the fighters and assassins, allowing us to defeat the dark elf party rather quickly. The crowd went silent, they definitely were cheering for their fellow drow adventurers and were both shocked and displeased to have seen them defeated, and so quickly. The dark elf adventurers bowed to us and then limped off the field, now out of the game. Without delay, our next opponents stepped forward and we were quite surprised to come face to face with a small band of paladins of Sisla. Brother Sen was not here, of course, but we suspected that this was another group that apparently had been recruited here in Grimtyr. Paladins of Sisla, attack! One of them yelled, the men in their perfect armor rushing forward. While they were all of lower level, there were a full dozen of them which significantly improved their odds against us. Fortunately, Ariana still had an orb of alchemist fire with her that badly damaged half the paladins, and after Redfern used a scroll of web against the combatants, we were able to make short work of them as well. Again the crowd fell silent, they felt for sure that their paladins of Sisla would be too much for us. Too proud to acknowledge their defeat, the paladins simply limped off the field and were quickly gone. Without any sort of break in the action, a third set of combatants approached. Introducing themselves as the personal guard of Lord D'Enzeth himself, they had come to put us down and win the silver medallion for themselves, likely the plan all along, so the medallion would stay with Lord D'Enzeth. The guard here looked quite formidable as they marched forward to attack, 2 dark elf clerics, 6 dark elf fighters and 2 dark elf magic users. This battle didn't go as easily as the first 2, given that we had exhausted most of our magic. Worse, one of the magic users got off a fireball spell against us, seriously wounding Eswin and Ariana, and forcing Sainairs and Kartha to heal them instead of attacking with their own maces. Hence, the combat lasted nearly 20 full minutes before we were able to eke out a win, myself and Redfern the only ones left standing. The crowd tired of our victories, they began to boo our party and even shouted obscenities. If it had been up to them, they would have run us out of the arena right there and now. Defeated, the personal guard of Lord D'Enzeth limped off the field, now out of the game. Catching our breath after all the combat, it appeared there were no other opponents, the silver medallion should have been ours. Amidst the chaos of the angry mob encircling the arena, I then spied the dark elf referee standing alongside those animal cages some 50 feet away. Expecting her to approach and name our party the victors, she instead just looked about, as if feeding from the negative energy of the chanting crowd. The drow referee smiled, waved her arms, then suddenly pulled open the gates keeping whatever was inside the animal cages secure. A harrowing moment later, a lion's head protruded out of the opened cage, followed by leathery wings, a strange combination. Then it became clear that the head and wings were physically attached to the same body, the creature was a manticore. Soon, 6 of the bizarre monsters emerged from the cage, looking about and enraged as all hell. Manticores! Redfern cried, familiar with the beasties. Not only can they fly but they can whip spikes from their tails that can easily kill a man in one blow. We're in serious trouble. This seems quite unfair. Eswin grumbled, angered by the sudden threat. Those creatures are very dangerous, especially out here in the open. Kartha shouted, fearful for all the drow within the arena. We need to defeat them before they turn on the dark elves and slaughter them. Indeed, the monsters took to the air and started attacking the nearest drow. Releasing them was an incredibly stupid thing to do. Rushing toward the encircling manticores, we were able to quickly attract their attention, the only ones here in the arena who were actually a threat to them. In turn, the monsters rushed forward and attacked, assaulting our party with tremendous ferocity. About 10 feet long and weighing half a ton each, the manticores appeared as overgrown lions with thick, leathery wings and a terrifying face. Given their natural ability to fly, at first all we could do was unleash our missile weapons upon them, wounding a few while dodging their own iron-like spikes. Redfern then used a scroll of fly on Eswin, allowing the warrior to take the fight directly to the monsters. A few also landed alongside us, each of them both biting at us as well as raking their claws at us. The monsters were naturally carnivorous and attacked with significant savagery, making the combat that much harder. Hence, given the sheer violence involved, my heroes had no choice but to destroy the manticores, killing all of them and emerging victorious. The drow citizenry continued to flee from the unleashing of the manticores, saved by the very heroes they were just booing minutes earlier. My heroes now stood near the center of the arena, the monster corpses continuing to bleed into the soft soil. Catching our breath and beginning to nurse our wounds, the dark elf fighter in plate mail armor slowly stepped toward us, her head down in embarrassment and humility. What were you thinking? Kartha condemned, quite angry. Those beasts could have killed a lot of townspeople here. I thought they would only attack you, the drow replied, clearly humbled. What were you doing with manticores in the first place? Redfern demanded to know. They were executioners, the dark elf replied, strangely unrepentant. Lord de Enzeth enjoyed sending his enemies to the arena to fight the manticores and be killed. I didn't think any of you would stand a chance against 6 of them. Then I would say we more than won this gladiator game, Eswin mocked. Where do we collect this silver medallion? You weren't supposed to win it, the fighter replied, stepping to you. Only the Lord's Guard was supposed to win. But you not only defeated our best but saved a lot of lives just now, so here. The drow warrior reached toward me and plopped the medallion in my hand, awarding me the silver treasure. You're now one of the richest and most powerful people in all Leakley, the woman said with a grin. Be wary, many would kill for that medallion. The referee then turned and walked away, leaving us to ponder. Several of my heroes asked to see the silver medallion, the item itself not all that uncommon, especially given the power and prestige it brought to its owner here in Leakley. Looks like we can get past those obnoxious guards now. Back at the power tower, Ariana reminded the party, recalling their rudeness and looking forward to encountering them again. I nodded, placed the medallion around my neck, then led the party away and back toward the entrance to the arena, the action here over and the encounter drawing to a close. And that's a wrap of episode number 49, Dark Elf Capital City Part 3. Expect additional episodes every few weeks as the story continues.